Hey guys, Sicko Man here, and with Ghost War having been out a week already, and having finished the campaign, it feels like a good time to get that Ghost Recon Wildlands review up. So starting off, the narrative doesn't always feel like it's pushing the game forward. There's an ample amount of collectibles you can pick up from pretty much any mission site within the game. These help fill in details and kind of give you a backstory of what's been going on before the ghosts got there, but there's nothing really pushing the narrative for the ghosts themselves. There are slight tidbits from the calls you get from your handler and the calls you make to her in between missions and when searching for new buchons, but that's really all you get in regards to character development, and it's really quite shallow in relation to what's going on within the game as a whole. Also, regarding these missions, the environment of the game is beautiful but lacking in use a lot of the time. I wish that more operations happened in the foothills or the mountains. Most things feel focused around these kind of cookie cutter village city locations. They're really just like copy and pastes of the model buildings you have pretty much anywhere, and there were a few times that I felt I went into a building before but was actually in a completely different province, entering what was the same building from another town. This is something that I was kind of disappointed in, but it's understandable in relation to making the game. But it does feel like more could be happening in not just the cities. We are talking about a giant cocaine trade that has to be operating more than just within the city. You have to have a place to grow this cocaine, and it doesn't feel like those places are utilized as much as they could be. I also wish that some parts of the NPC geography changed as the game progressed as well. Some areas where you cleared out the cartel as part of a mission maybe should become maybe rebel held areas, or at least no more cartel NPCs should be spawning in these locations anymore. There's one specific instance in the game where I cleared out a manufacturing area of cartel operatives, and when I came back maybe 10 minutes later, these operatives had already respawned aside from the mission. I understand that there is the kind of prestige mode and that you can revisit these missions, but I think unless you're going to revisit these missions and have already started the mission, that these individuals should most likely not be spawning anymore, and you should be maybe seeing rebel held areas now instead. This I think would give you a much better sense of how you're completing the game and kind of make it feel more fully fleshed out. It would add a kind of story, and you'd be able to see how the resistance is going against the cartel in Unidad, and kind of give a better sense of this idea that the rebels are there and operating, and not just awkwardly walking along the streets and meeting you at checkpoints. Moving on to the ending, the first ending of the game feels rather aggressive but very fitting for the game. There's a lot of emotion placed into it, and the writing is pretty well done. A lot of this ending takes place within a cinematic, so I will say you don't really get to play it out aside from getting to the location, but it is also a recycled cinematic. So moving on to ending 2, this ending feels a bit more clandestine and CIA in the sense of how it goes. You do get a sense of what the DOJ and the government has planned as a whole for this cartel, and you get a better sense of how these things would actually go down in regards to what you can get the most of from your assets. I do recommend going and completing all of the buchon missions in all of the game, not just if you're a 100%er, but someone that wants to get more of a story from this game. The only way to get the second ending is to complete all of the missions, but I don't recommend maybe completing the final mission. The first ending mission is probably the best ending mission and gives you the best sense of how the people in this game feel, but other than that, the second mission is really just copy and paste with a different kind of cinematic, but even that cinematic is almost down to frame by frame copy and paste, except for a very key difference at the end, and this difference does kind of make all the difference in the world to the ending, but I don't necessarily think it's something you should have to go back and play again. Maybe look it up on YouTube if you're feeling it. I don't really think you should have to go through that entire mission again just to see that different ending cinematic. In regards to the game's environment, wildlife is present but plays little to no part in the game. This feels like an extremely poor use of what is a very diverse environment in the real world, especially considering every time you turn on a car radio, you almost always hear DJ Perico talking about the different animals to avoid in the game. He specifically mentions the fact that people can be killed by jaguars, but not once in the game that I experienced this sensation. This was kind of a letdown for me, especially since I think at night the predation of your characters would definitely add tension to the game. I also think it would make for more interesting reasons to not do night missions. I found myself constantly going for night missions because it emphasized the stealth of the game and gave me a better heads up to what was going on. It allowed me to move maybe a bit slower and more tactically, but also I got cleaner kills and better mission completion when I was doing this. This definitely makes it feel like completing the game during the daytime isn't really worth it, because you're more often going to be seen and have to engage in firefights that you may not be able to win, and kind of take away from the enjoyment of the game when you're constantly dying. As a result, I found myself almost immediately unlocking the thermal vision and night vision vision perks so that I could use them and kind of do these clandestine night ops with the ghosts. So overall, I think maybe adding these jaguars as predators at night would definitely influence the game a bit better and give you attention to think about instead of just slowly creeping your way through. You also have to think about the fact that something might be coming up behind you while you're stalking. I also don't understand why neither of the aggro factions had attack dogs. I know this is something in video games that kind of gets flack a lot of the time. You might get condemnation from PETA or animal rights activists, but to pretend that these things don't exist in the real world is kind of asinine. I don't think it's something that's completely out there. I do believe Unidad and the cartel had the ability to maybe train attack dogs. It would also offer another thing to give them the foot up. Having a different NPC that could detect you sooner than maybe the cartel or Unidad members could, I think definitely would have influenced the game in a better way too. A lot of the times the NPC and the AI aren't super responsive to what's going on. You can easily kill groups of members and not get an immediate response to what you're doing, and this kind of makes some missions easier, but it takes away from the tension of the game, and I think adding these kind of attack dogs that were a bit more alert than their handlers were would add something in the game for you to consider when engaging enemies. And you could even add a different mechanic where you're able to bait these dogs. Maybe you set down a bait trap and it messes up their sense of smell. There's just a lot of different things that I think could have benefited the game's stealth aspects and how you're supposed to plan out missions, because while you did plan out missions, there really wasn't anything more to it once you unlocked the gun sync perks, because now you could kill up to 4 people by yourself and really have no repercussions if you're doing it from a distance. There's in fact a trophy for a 400-meter shot. It's something that's not super hard to get if you have one of the higher powered sniper rifles, but for the way that they were promoting this playstyle, it kind of took away from the more stealth aspects of the game, especially if you're playing by yourself. So I think considering adding different mechanics and NPCs that can detect you a bit better would definitely add a boost to this tension that you have in the game. A lot of the game is not very difficult to complete if you're just taking it slightly slower and not at a complete running gun pace, which I think takes away from the stealth aspect. When I think stealth, I don't think, oh, I have to walk instead of running gun my way through this game. So overall, the story itself was pretty acceptable. I think there are areas for improvement for this game, and I think if Ubisoft follows up with a sequel, they definitely need to add some things in regards to how the mechanics work for the game and increasing the sense of tension you would have as a stealth mission, and in regards to what can take you on in the open world itself. While Unidad and Santa Blanca are prevalent throughout the world, I think having some environmental hazards would definitely liven up the game a bit more and give you a bit more to think about as you're progressing through the world. As a whole, I think I would give the story a solid 7.5 or 8 out of 10. It's a solid C, maybe even a B, but I don't think it's anything more than that. To say it's anything less, I think would be rather insulting to what the game is. It's one of the first Ubisoft games in a while that I've really felt good about playing, and I think that if they followed this game and made a sequel and kind of expanded on what was going on, they'd have a very good product on their hands, and I definitely look forward to seeing what else they do with this Ghost Recon series, especially considering the format for this game and it being open world. There's a lot to explore and what they can do in the future and expand on in the game, and I look forward to seeing what the team does. Moving on to the PvP, it feels about the same way as it did in the beta. Group communication remains an integral part of this gameplay. It's a lot slower now that people are more aware of what the maps are and the best locations to be on those maps in regards to sniping and rushing your enemies, and I think maybe adding a few more maps would diversify this a bit. There's some areas that I think would benefit from maybe reducing the amount of foliage or increasing the amount of foliage. Wide open areas in this PvP game mode are almost instantly the death of you, but I think they could reduce the foliage and maybe add some more city landscape aspects to it. A lot of it is this outdoor space, and I think getting maybe more of an urban sense would make it feel better. There are some urban areas within the Ghost Recon Wildlands world itself, so I think maybe incorporating these into the map rotation would definitely give a better feel for what's going on in the game and kind of make PvP a more enjoyable experience as you diversify the way that individuals have to play when they're playing in PvP. Another aspect of diversity that lacks in this PvP is regarding the guns. Classes feel pretty diverse, but the guns available do not. Submachine guns feel extremely underpowered considering that none of these areas are urban areas, but I guess it kind of makes up in the sense that you have the scout class's mortar ability, but this ability in itself becomes extremely overpowered and should probably have a much longer cooldown time. Sniper classes though, however, require a lot of skill, the most notable being the ranger class, as it's not a true sniper class. You have both an assault rifle and what I guess could pass has as a sniper rifle, but this rifle only has a large scope on it with a 3-round burst and a full auto effect. This I think also takes away from the weapon diversity, because instead of incorporating maybe a better semi-automatic rifle or some alternative, they just added another machine gun in here. It really feels like it was copy and pasted from the point man classes and just given a better scope. So I think they could emphasize this with maybe adding the G28 instead, or giving the G28 a 3-round burst feature and then the semi-auto feature, but full auto isn't very good for this class. In regards to the game modes themselves, there's only one game mode, and I think this is where the game falls short. I think a competitive ladder or more game modes could definitely help. You really only have the quick play game mode elimination style right now. If they added maybe a search and destroy function or something else, I think we could benefit. Maybe the sense of, you know, go destroy the other team's coke stashes, something like that, that pulls back to the story. And I also think that there could maybe be a mechanic shift in these game modes as well to help improve them. Marking enemies is a bit too easy with your drone. I think that if an enemy is in foliage or is wearing a ghillie suit, they should be taken into account when the drone marks them. So unless you're using your thermal vision, your drone shouldn't be getting those marks sometimes. There are a few instances where I was in full ghillie suit hidden in bushes and grass without moving, and I was able to be marked by enemies regardless of the fact if they could see me or not. And considering the only way to really see your enemies on the map is by marking them, for this effect to be taking place when I'm not moving and I'm pretty much in complete cover definitely takes away from the aspect of survival and kind of ruins the game for people who are taking this very seriously and very stealthy. I'm not saying you have to completely get rid of the auto mark for this feature, but maybe reconsider the way in which the mechanic works. I know for one of the scout class drones, unless an individual is moving, it won't mark them, and I think this should maybe be taken into consideration for almost all classes, or for anyone that's wearing the ghillie suits. If someone's wearing a ghillie suit and it's in foliage, maybe change it around so that unless they're moving considerably, they're not really noticed, and this would also give a kind of leg up to the understanding of stealth in this game. The PvP feels very much like it's oriented around stealth, but for this feature to still maintain and exist in the PvP, it takes away from that and definitely encourages an almost too aggressive of play style that I think kind of ruins the PvP experience. Overall, this PvP feels deserving of the Tom Clancy title. I recommend that if you have Ghost Recon Wildlands and you haven't played the PvP yet, definitely go check it out. It's worth a try. If you're someone who enjoyed the SOCOM games growing up, or you're someone else that just has been looking for a more stealthy tactical PvP experience without having to invest in Rainbow Six Siege, this is definitely the place to find it. And I think that if you enjoy this PvP, it's almost worth going out and also buying Rainbow Six Siege, just so you can get that more boosted feeling of how this style of gameplay works and get a better sense of what it can feel like in a full-fledged environment that's designed to be operating like this. Overall, I think Ghost Recon Wildlands was pretty well executed. It's definitely renewed a sense of faith I think I lost in Ubisoft, and I look forward to seeing a sequel to this game. I don't think it's something that should be dropped by the wayside, and I hope that with the release of the PvP Ghost War and the continued support for post-story missions and DLC throughout the seasons, will hopefully keep a very strong fan base around the game, so you don't see the dwindle off that the Division felt. Alright guys, thanks for watching. I'm Sicko Man. If you'd like to see some more reviews, please leave a comment below. Tell me what games you would like to see me play, you'd like to see me review. Remember to like the video, it really helps me out. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't had a chance. Once again, thanks for watching. I'm Sicko Man. Sicko out.